Hello there, you awakening wonders. Thanks for joining me today for Stay Free with Russell Brand Oracle Special with the great Neil Oliver and Lara Logan, where we'll be talking about free defining news stories this week. First, Lily Phillips and ethics and morality and the pornographization of culture and even interaction. Secondly, Trump's acquisition of the Gaza Strip. Just empty rhetoric or the wrecking ball horror that his detractors fear? And finally, USAID, the CIA in different forms under different guises. Is that the reason that neoliberalism and social democracy has fallen away into failure and being replaced by this kind of populist nationalism best defined by the Trump MAGA movement? We'll be talking about all of those subjects and more. If you don't have Rumble Premium yet, get Rumble Premium now and use the code BRAND to get a reduction, in addition to more content from me, like me at a shooting range, me doing different interviews, me hanging around. You'll also get additional content from Glenn Greenwald and Dan Bongino and Crowder, as well as an ad-free experience over on Rumble. For the first 20 minutes or so, we will stay with you on X, YouTube, Facebook, wherever you're watching this, but then we will be at our home on Rumble. And don't worry, if you're a local subscriber, we'll continue to provide that content until you find the time to join us over on Rumble Premium, our main home. So without any further hullabaloo, ludicrousness, or needless linguistics, let's welcome to the show Neil Oliver and Lara Logan. Lara Logan, Neil Oliver, thanks so much for joining me today for Stay Free Oracles with Russell Brand, you two being the oracles in this instance. Thank you for joining us, Lara.
Russell.
Neil and I last week soldiered on as bravely as was possible without you. We felt somewhat impeded. Did quite well, didn't we?
Upholstery, as I recall.
Yes, that's right. We looked like twin denim armchairs in a club for men that you simply didn't penetrate, Lara, and it's on you. And perhaps the reason I'm using such gendered and eroticized language is our first subject today is Lily Phillips. Now, I recognise that Lily Phillips is not at the very forefront of the news cycle right this minute. And over the next hour, we will be talking, of course, about Trump's acquisition of Gaza and additionally USAID, which some people, me specifically, are calling the story of the century. And if anyone else uses that phrase, they're a plagiarist plagiarising directly from me. But first, we're going to talk about Lily Phillips, not just Lily Phillips in her capacity as an OnlyFans model. I want to tell you why, both of you, why I'm interested in Lily, and watch out for any puerility, prurience, or unwarranted attention here. I am struck by Lily Phillips because a lot is enshrined in this story. Lily Phillips famously slept with 100 people in a day, and marathon and gargantuan sex sessions are hardly news. They've existed in pornography and in culture for a long time. Something that's fascinating about Lily Phillips and the OnlyFans phenomena, though, is the normalization of the commodification of sex. We not only have the commodification of sex, which we've had, I suppose, for as long as we've had prostitution, but now we have the normalization and almost banalization of that commodification, i.e. the idea that anybody can sell sex at any time. And here's like an example that sort of really made this hit home for me. My wife told me that she heard of a fitness instructor that simultaneously does OnlyFans. And when I heard that, I thought of what it would do to me if I didn't have a consistent and robust moral framework in the form of Christ Jesus. If when I'd been any age from 14 to 30 in my single adult life, I suppose, or post-pubescent life at least, if I'd have known that you could meet a human being, interact with them at a grocery store or outside a schoolyard or indeed in a fitness class, and then you could pay money to see that person intimately expose themselves in a way that typically they only would to a loved one or a gynecologist, I don't know what that would do to me spiritually. And when I think of that ad infinitum, when I think of the phenomena of pornography, when I think of its impact, the commodification of all that is sacred, it helps me to understand something that is culturally pervasive that probably hasn't yet been correctly defined. Lara, I know you have strong views and are a strong advocate for anti-trafficking measures when it comes to women and children. I also know that you've been the victim of rape. And I wonder how you feel about the sacredness and sanctity of sex, and what the commodification of sex, whether it's someone like Lily Phillips or even someone like me, who when I was a famous person was being indulgent, hedonistic, Epicurean to a ludicrous degree. What do you think is the impact of the commodification, commercialization and normalization of that commodification when it comes to the erotic? Dear Lara.
You know, Russell, I think the only thing I can tell you is what I told my children, is that they want you to believe today that you can have physical, intimate interactions, sexual interactions with people, and that it doesn't take anything from you. And I think that's just a lie. And I think that's part of the reason that Lily Phillips, in the documentary film that was made about her doing this stunt, is crying, right? She's weeping, and it's obvious that this person who, for whatever reasons, whatever, I don't know enough about her and her life and what brought her to that point, but this is a person whose soul is just being obliterated. I mean, I was lucky enough to be raised to love myself, you know, and to have a sense of self-worth. I'll tell you what my mother told me when I was a young girl. She said, I'm just going to be honest with you. She said, if you want to come cheap, there isn't a man in this town who won't take you. She said, they'll be lining up from here to Timbuktu. And I tell you something, she said, at your funeral, you'll still be that girl. You'll be that girl that everybody took a ride on. You'll be the town bicycle that everybody loved to ride. And she said, and it's up to you to put a price on yourself. Because if you don't put a price on yourself, nobody else is going to do that. And she said, and while you're at it, don't worry about letting me down. Just worry about letting yourself down. Because if you never let yourself down, you'll never let me down. And she said, and the other thing I want to tell you is if you get pregnant, she said, don't listen to anything anyone says. There's no good way out of it. Doesn't matter whether you have an abortion, whether you give your child up for adoption, whether you have to become a teen mother. She said, these are all hard choices. And these are mistakes that have a cost that stays with you for life. And she said, you don't want to be in that position. Trust me. Just don't put yourself in that position. You know, and not everybody has a mother like that. Not everybody grows up with that sense of self-worth. And we have obviously become a society that when you take the meaning out of life and the meaning out of spirituality, if you say, well, God doesn't matter, and religion is corrupt, and priests are all pedophiles, and it's all, you know, evil and horrible, and we're better off without it. What you essentially do is you take purpose away, you take meaning away, you really take spirituality away. This concept that you can find spirituality in nature and it's got nothing to do with God is sort of ridiculous to me. And what you do is you end up with a very sad, very rich, but very broken, empty little girl. That's what I see. When I see that little girl, I know she's 100% responsible for her actions and for her choices. She's old enough. She's made choices that is, you know, there's no, and the other thing my mother would say is everybody pays the piper, right? There's no getting away from everything. There's a price for everything. And you don't get to choose if you pay it or not. You pay it. That's how it works. So she's going to pay the price and is paying the price, obviously, for her actions. But that we live in a society where people can profit off of that, all the people that are around her that are profiting off it, all the men. I would hope to God that I didn't raise a son that would be lining up to be one of those 100 men that just wants to be there. But I'm not unrealistic. I know how the world is. I just, for me, it's soulless. And I think it's indicative of the fact that we've become lost. We've lost our sense of decency. We've lost our sense of humanity. We've lost, I mean, when you're putting yourself out like that, it's physically disgusting to me. It's literally disgusting. I can't fathom it. And I have nothing but pity for all the people that are involved in elevating that and putting it out and profiting off it, because you sold your soul and you sold it to the devil. And that's, you know, that's between you and the devil and God, if you believe in it. But, you know, I just, it's an indictment on us, on us all. And it's also a warning, because this idea that you can do OnlyFans and you can do a little bit here and a little bit there, OnlyFans is grooming. And it's grooming for a much darker world, just like pornography is training. Pornography traffickers today, they use pornography to train kids so that they know what to do when they put them to work. That's what it's for, and that's what it's used for. And I understand if you're a person out there that says, well, what's wrong with looking at a little bit of porn or whatever? What you do in your private life is what you do in your private life. And that may very well be true. It's not for me to say. But what I do think each one of us has a responsibility to do is to look at the whole picture. And when you are raising young girls to believe that there's some kind of achievement in selling yourself and selling your body, sex is always sold. I'm not unrealistic about that. You can't be self-righteous and say it's okay to do it in a movie with mood lighting and make it look beautiful, and it's somehow different. No, it's the same thing. It is the same thing. And so we have to ask ourselves and come to our own decisions is where we stand on that. But when you get to the point where a girl is doing that to herself and people are trying to elevate her for that, people are offering her more money and better deals and all the rest of it, there's going to be nothing left of that girl. When they're done with her, there'll be nothing left of her.
They're not only elevating her, but also simultaneously denigrating her. That formed part of the conversation between Lily Phillips and myself, which I approached openly and transparently as a person that in the past has had not a complicated relationship with sex, an exuberant relationship with sex. And I discussed that exuberance.
All right, steady on there.
I didn't know how else to describe it. I'm enthusiastic, man. By the way, actually, Lara, I heard that there was a point where that dog in your room made a low grumbling sound while out of frame, and I'm glad that the dog has subsequently been revealed, because otherwise, Lord alone knows what conclusions we might have drawn from the unseen beasts that roam.
Dog.
It was certainly alarming. If you're watching this on X or YouTube, remember that this show in its entirety is available exclusively on Rumble, and you should become a member of Rumble Premium to get ad-free content as well as additional content, including early access to the content I made. Please use the code BRAND to get access to that. Here's a small part of the conversation between Lily and myself where she talked about how she started on OnlyFans. And Neil, after that, I'd love you to come in on what you think happens to morality and the very idea of sex as sacred when it's introduced to mass technology, because I think that's an important part of this story, not just ethics and pornography, but the impact of technology on morality. Here's Lily Phillips talking about how she got into the OnlyFans.
I was like 18 and I started to hear about this OnlyFans. For me, I thought it was like the perfect job because it combines something I love, sex, with, a job and being able to monetize off that and being creative. And so when I went off to university, I knew that what I went to university for wasn't quite what I wanted to do. I wasn't really sure why I went to university. I just kind of went because everyone else was. And then that's when I was like, I'm going to start an OnlyFans.
Later, we'll be talking about USAID, which until pretty recently I would have considered to be one of the great controversial moments in the Trump administration. But of course, since then, there has been the Trump acquisition, let's call it, of Gaza. We'll be talking about all of that a little later. But first, Neil, I'd love your response, mate, on the Lily Phillips phenomena and the impact of technology on pornography and the impact of pornography on the human spirit, and what your reaction is to this.
I find it difficult to follow Lara talking about it because, one of my basic reactions to the story is that I do believe that sex is profoundly different for men and women. Now, that's my opinion. I think there's no way of making broad generalizations that that sex is just sex and that it affects men as it does women. And I do think comment on the Lily Phillips story is more relevant coming from a woman and from women, because a male response to the act is profoundly different. But I suppose what I thought right away was, I think she's 23. Is that right? She's about that age, and she's obviously been in the industry for for a while, or she was younger when she started in the industry. And I'm a dad of my daughter's 21, and so anything that happens to any young woman, whatever it is, I automatically think about it in relation to mine. And so I'm well, just frankly horrified at the thought of it.
Thank you.
I think that there's no way. I don't think there's any way of looking at what happened to Lily in that project, in that stunt, as Lara called it, without seeing it as a violation, and then but without saying that she was in any way coerced. I'm sure we're taking it as read that she was completely compliant with the event, but looked at objectively. I heard her use expressions at certain times when that coverage that Lara's talking about, where she seemed to be distressed about what had just happened, and she was talking about sort of one in and one out, and there's no way you could listen to the testimony from her own lips without it sounded like violation. And again, I'm always just reflecting that back and thinking about it in relation to my own flesh and blood. But I think that my again, I mean, my wife, has talked with all sorts of conversations about sex over the years, for all sorts of different reasons. And she has always reiterated to me that it's very different for a woman than it is for a man. And that's always been my instinct. And I've had the testimony from people that are very close to me, very intimately close to me, that reinforces what I've always thought. And I find it very difficult in that context to imagine that a woman, a very young woman like Lily, can commodify sex in that way without taking a profound hit.
If you want to see the rest of this show, you'll have to join us over on Rumble. Click the link in the description and join us there.
Let me ask you both. Wait, can I interrupt and ask you both? Would either of you have done it? Would you have been one of those 100?
Hello there, you awakening wonders, and welcome to our Thanksgiving special. What are you thankful for this year? Are you thankful that the world appears to be changing? Are you thankful that the limitless Lord of Light is abundant and resplendent in your life? Are you thankful for the result of the election? Or are you Kimmel-like in the corner, quaking and quivering? If you're watching us on YouTube, we'll be available for the first 15 minutes there. Then we'll be exclusively streaming on our home, Rumble. Not only my home, but the home of Dr. Disrespect. And it's difficult to imagine that a medical man would make a false diagnosis when it comes to choosing the best platform. Or perhaps you're a member of Bongino's army, thankfully waiting to, what is that thing that's in Turkey? There's some drug, isn't there, in Turkey? People always point out every Christmas season. Well, the reason you fall asleep after your Thanksgiving is because Turkey's got this thing in it. Someone will tell you it today, I bet now. Let me know in the comments and chat if that's happened to you already. Well, I'm very thankful this year that we're having a conversation with Michaela Fuller, formerly Michaela Peterson, who knows what it's like to ride the roller coaster of being dragged into public life because of her famous father, the sort of unprecedented and peculiar Professor Jordan Peterson, who is my friend, whom I adore on a personal level and who I admire very deeply. Now, imagine, like, when you become a famous person, you get to know famous people's kids and stuff. Like, I know some of the, I know people that have done really well at being the child of a famous person, and other people that are destroyed by it. It's, like, as a father, I've got kids. That's actually the prerequisite for any father. And it's like I want to live their life in advance of them. Like, I'd like to walk in front of them like someone at a pageant holding a staff aloft for a forthcoming monarch, putting petals upon their path so that they never encounter horror. But you will encounter horror in the world, because this world belongs to Satan. It's a brilliant conversation. We had it it was like yesterday or something that I had the conversation. And we started off talking about politics and stuff like that, and culture war and diet and Bobby Kennedy a little bit. But then she told me that she's Christian, and the conversation really took a turn, I would say, for the better. And it became pretty fascinating. And I learned something pretty important from Michaela. She runs her dad's businesses. She's got her own podcast. She's a married woman and a mother. But when we started talking about Christianity, I really recognized that she was practicing Christianity at depth. What I mean by this is whatever it is you believe in, let me know in the comments and chat. I don't know if you're an atheist or you're a Christian or you're a Jew or you're a Muslim or you're a Scientologist. And in a way, I pray for you that you become a Christian, because that's what I believe in. But I also, don't think I know more than you about anything. I've never felt that about people. What I would say is, if it's not being practiced in the present moment, it's not being practiced at all. That's the only place you can know God, is in the present moment. It's the only place that healing can take place. Someone told me yesterday, is in the present moment. When she talked about Christ and self-improvement, it really got to me. So listen, we'll be on YouTube for about 10 minutes, then we'll be exclusively on Rumble, our home. And you should become an Awaken Wonder, particularly if you enjoyed this conversation, because my conversation with Jonathan Paggio is amazing. The break bread conversation that I had there, which is only available to our Awaken Wonder community members, is fascinating and intriguing. And in fact, hold on a minute, am I going to be able to pull up an asset of that if I press that stream deck? Well, mess with our lives. Yeah, well, anyway, have a look at this.
And so that's the problem of technology, is that it gives you what you want with infinite power, with increasing power. But the problem is, what you want is, if it's perverted, then all the side effects of what you want, you didn't notice. You hadn't thought about it. You hadn't realized that there are side effects to what you want, because you're not aiming in the right direction. So now all the side effects start to manifest themselves, and you're like, well, I didn't know. Like, I didn't know that if I started, I love Elon for all intents, but Elon is hilarious, because he's like, I'm going to start OpenAI, and I'm going to create the most powerful AI company in the world, but it'll be open source, and it'll be great because we'll be open source. And then he creates OpenAI, and it's the most powerful thing in the world. And he says it's the biggest single threat to the human existence.
Me and Jonathan Paggio, absolutely fantastic. Anyway, listen, this is a great conversation with Michaela Peterson. I think you're gonna love it, and you're gonna get sort of insights into what it's like to be a member of that family and that movement, and some interesting insights into Christianity. All right, without further ado, here's Michaela Fuller. Michaela, thanks so much for joining me for Stay Free with Russell Brand. It's so lovely to speak with you.
Thank you so much for inviting me on.
Firstly, should we start with what your new role is and what your new surname is? Seems that everything's changing pretty radically around you.
It's true. I mean, I changed my name. I'm no longer a Peterson. I'm now a Fuller. I did get married a couple of years ago. So that's a big change, although it was a much needed change. So that's good. I had a baby, so now I have two. So that was a change.
And also, like, your role within the organization that you run with your father has altered, and you're in particular responsible for what exactly now?
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, we launched Peterson Academy in August this year, and that's gone splendidly. So that's an online education platform, and we have professors from all over the world, like very interesting people teaching 8-hour courses at a university level. We have 35,000 people on the platform now enrolled. So that's what I've really been working on fully for the last 3 years, along with my podcast and kind of overseeing Dad's brand, although there are a lot of people involved in that now, thank goodness.
Yeah, and it's sort of, in a way, it's a really interesting time to be sort of coming into excellence when it comes to new media projects, because the landscape's changing so significantly. I've been very honoured and flattered to have been asked to participate in the Peterson Academy. I know it's going really, really well, and I'm excited to do something with you guys. Will you tell me how you think the landscape will change as a result of the election, in particular with what you're doing?
Well, I'm hoping, and this might be a pipe dream, I'm hoping Peterson Academy can work with the Trump administration. So we'll see. That might just be shooting for the stars. But I mean, the landscape's changed dramatically in the last couple of years. Like, I think we're going in a really good direction. I'm positive about how things are going. I think everybody in America has breathed a sigh of relief since the last election. I mean, I was on Threads the other day, which I never go on, and I think Threads is even shifting politically, which I never saw 3 months ago. So I think things are heading in a good direction.
Yeah, it's changing pretty fast. And well, it's not, I mean, the potential for change seems to be increasing radically and dramatically. And while, like a couple of years ago, if you'd have said, oh, maybe the Trump administration and the Peterson Academy can come to some arrangement, I'd have thought you were a lunatic. But now I feel like, well, that could happen, actually.
Oh, the unlikely seems to be occurring rapidly. So yeah, I mean, I hope so. I think it would be good for people. You know, the quality of the education we have is unparalleled, I think. I went to a number of universities, so I kind of know what a middle end university is like, and it is so far above that, it's not even comparable.
I'm wondering, like you, I'm sure, if during the next 60 days before confirmations and inauguration, whether you think there's anything likely to disrupt it. Is that something you've considered much, Michaela?
Oh, definitely. I definitely, you know, even watching Trump go to the UFC fights and out and about, it's a little bit concerning. Not that I assume he would be hiding in a cave until he's officially president, but I mean, I don't know. On the other hand, I think that there's such a tide shifting away from wokeism that even if something happened, I don't think wokeism would necessarily win in the end. I hope nothing happens. It would be a complete disaster for the world.
Like, one of the things that I feel is significant is that it's clear now that you can't censor and control the conversation. What appeared to be taking place broadly was that the role of the state and the advocates for the state's ideas in media were able to completely control and shut down conversation around a variety of cultural and political and political issues, including health and war, to a degree where open discourse was impossible. I suppose one of the things we can take from the recent election result is that's over. Independent media and independent media commentators collectively have a greater reach than the legacy media. So I say, like, we're seeing things like pronouns being taken out of people's bios, people that really furiously advocated
I saw
for that. Yes. So in a, and
I saw that. Yeah.
So in a way, like, even the soft cultural symptoms of change are becoming really clear and evident, aren't they? Even, I suppose, in sporting events, seeing people doing that, like Trump YMCA, should we call it a jig, is an indicator that it's no longer taboo to be supporting that movement. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about how that's going to affect your content and how it's going to affect the kind of people that you ask to participate, in particular in the Peterson Academy, and the type of conversations you're likely to have going forward. Do you think, Michaela, that there has to be some ongoing reconciliation, or do you think that this is going to be a time that's defined by a kind of celebration of the annihilation of enemies? Oh, well, you guys lost, woke lost, the Democrats lost, it's over? Or do you think that there's going to be an ongoing conversation that might even center around reconciliation?
I think so. I went to a Trump event in Phoenix, and a lot of what was mentioned there was reconciliation. It wasn't we won. It was we need to bring this country back together. I know personally, I think, and I'm Canadian, so I have a view from the outside, but because of what my family went through, you know, I think my first feeling when I saw that Trump had won was like, yes, we won. Like, down with wokeism, and more of a probably maybe it was a negative point of view. Although I do think that elements of wokeism were like truly evil. So it's hard not to feel like that. But I think people are going to come together. I hope, you know, people on the very far left, maybe not so much. but I think there's a lot of reconciliation, and I do think people are relieved, and I do think maybe 6 months into Trump's presidency, when people who are really far left realize that the country's not turning into a dictatorship, things will calm down.
But do you think that in independent media we should be participating in that reconciliation by the kind of guests that we have on and the kind of alliances we have? Like, right, do you think, for example, that you would have Don Lemon doing a course at the Peterson Academy, or Brian Stelter as a guest on your podcast? Or if MSNBC folds up, would you be getting Rachel Maddow and Joe Scarborough on and having conversations with them and like looking to find common ground? Can you imagine personally doing that?
You know what? So say for Peterson Academy to start with, we haven't been looking at people that politically. Like, people who come onto the platform aren't trying to teach in an ideological manner, whether that's right wing or left wing. So we've already reached out to more left wing people to come in and teach something like screenwriting. You know, a lot of the people in Hollywood are still very left wing, and a lot of the best screenwriters are left wing. And it was like, okay, politics aside, you're still a great screenwriter. Would you come and join us? And there's been some pushback on their side for coming onto the platform, which I think is actually going away, because the platform is politically, I hope it's politically neutral. I think it's politically neutral. So for Peterson Academy, I don't think very much is going to change, because we've already been trying to be kind of even keeled. And then as for my podcast, as long as the person's interesting, I'm not going to invite anybody on I'm going to have an ideological battle with. I'm just not. I don't care enough.
Right, you can't bother to do that.
No, I don't need to convince them, you know. They can keep living their life.
Yeah, sometimes I don't think excuse me, sometimes I don't think I have the energy for an ideological battle either. But what I do sometimes I'm interested in is reconciliation, because I don't, like anyone, I suppose, I don't know what's going to happen in the next 4 years. We sort of saw like a host of high profile figures saying they're going to leave. And I suppose if you've like continued to say that Donald Trump's Adolf Hitler bringing about some new Reich, then if you believe that, then you would be obligated to leave. But I suppose I don't feel like that's going to happen. I don't feel like that's going to happen. I feel like you're going to have a lot of people in metropolitan areas, parts of professional media class and other comparable industries that tend to be metropolitan, having to undertake some sort of investigation into why they had such an extreme reaction and position. But then I suppose some of them might look at, if like Trump does say ban trans people from the military, if that happens, for example, are they going to see that as a justification and demonstration of what they were concerned about? Before we continue with the interview, we're going to come off YouTube, okay? Not because it's particularly the sort of thing that will be censored, but because Ramble is our home, because we know there's a guarantee we can speak freely and open there. So click the link in the description. Join us over on...
Hey, you Awakening Wonders. Thanks for joining me today for Stay Free with Russell Brand. Thank you, Tim Cast, for the raid. Thank you, Mug Club, for the raid. Wherever you're watching us, make your way over to Rumble. We're talking about a variety of subjects today. We're talking about Colbert has been cancelled. We're talking about riots all the way across the UK and people being flung in prison in the United Kingdom simply for protesting. What's going on in my country? Let me know in the comments and chat if you are from there. This is a time for us to awaken urgently and immediately. Wherever you're watching this, we need you to be an active member of our community. If you don't have Rumble Premium yet, get Rumble Premium now. The details of how to get it are there. You not only get extra content from me, but also from Colbert. Not from Colbert, that guy's not getting a job on Rumble, but also from Glenn Greenwald, Mug Club, Timcast, a whole variety of fantastic contributors. Now then, NATO's got a lot of work to do. NATO must be ready for two-front conflict with Russia and China. It's going to be tricky, but at least that guy's a Nazi, so he's going to be committed, it looks like. Before we get into the Russell Brand Unpacked story, the United States is still in spasms of despair and confusion over the Epstein files and the failure to release them. Here's Rokana talking about Mike Johnson shutting down Congress early. Look at how democracies work these days, whether it's in my country, the UK, or the United States of America, whether it's under Trump or Kamala? Does it seem strange that we can't get the disclosure and transparency that some would believe is your democratic American and British right?
So Thomas Massey is saying tonight that if the House closes up for the summer without this vote, it's just going to get worse in September. What is the state of play in this breaking news situation right now tonight on your discharge petition?
Well, more and more Republicans are joining the call for a discharge petition, but the Speaker is not willing to have a vote. You know, let's just speak plainly, because we use all these complex words, discharge petition. Sometimes I think Congress is sort of a priesthood, which uses obscure and arcane language to confuse the American people. Here's the bottom line. There's a majority of the Congress that has the votes to release the Epstein files. We have a majority of the votes. And the problem is that we're not having a vote. And that's the dirty secret in Washington. It's not how you vote. It's that most of these things never come up for a vote. And all a discharge petition is saying...
Let me know in the comments and chat how you feel about Thomas Massey, who always regarded as one of the most authentic voices in America. And I say that as a person who recognized the election of Trump was a necessity in order to stop America collapsing into a level of globalist imperialism, the likes of which the world has not yet seen, except in the United Kingdom, which I'll be talking about a little later. Here's Thomas Massey on his investigation into the Epstein files.
I was wondering, with the paralysis in the Rules Committee, it seems like they're not going to be meeting again today because of the Epstein amendments. Have you chatted with anybody about that at this point?
Well, it wouldn't really matter. Their Epstein bill resolution is non-binding, so it's kind of fake. The resolution that I have co-sponsored with Rogan would actually bring up legislation that would be binding on the president.
Is your understanding that that will ripen the day after lawmakers get back from August recess?
Yeah, unfortunately, we have 6 days and we needed 7 days for the discharge petition to ripen before we could bring this up before the August recess. So we'll have to bring it up after the August recess. But the good news is the Speaker has no interest in keeping us here one extra day.
Let's have a look at Trump posting on Thomas Massey moments after this. Thomas Massey, the worst Republican congressman, and almost a guaranteed no vote on each and every time. Embarrassment to Kentucky, lazy, slow-moving, totally disingenuous, a real loser. Never has anything positive to add. Looking for someone good to run against this guy, someone I can endorse and vigorously campaign for. Massey responded, I introduced the only binding congressional legislation to release the Epstein files and already have 20 sponsors. In return, the attacks on me intensified. As you can guess, I'm not backing down. I'm fighting, but I need your support to stay in the ring. Well, there you go. So there are certainly ongoing conversations about the nature of democracy, the nature of the deep state, the ability of powerful interests to conceal information that might change the way that people feel about American democracy, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat. Perhaps if we found our identity in Christ rather than other fallible human beings just like us, we would have a closer connection to reality and would be better nourished and better served in so doing. Now, we've got a lot to talk about in this show. Colbert's show's been cancelled. In a way, isn't that precisely what was warranted after his extraordinary displays in advocating for the interests of the state, whether that was vaccines or shutting down conversations about the power of the deep state and of spy agencies? It's an extraordinary story in lots of ways. We'll be getting into that in just a moment. Before that, though, the UK is about to break down into total despair. Everybody knows it. And if you're an American and you want to know what could happen if you don't ensure the principles of democracy in your republic are regarded, you need look no further than the UK. Here's Russell Brand unpacked on migration. The migration crisis in the UK is on the very precipice of absolute meltdown and conflagration. In Essex, the county that I am from, the New Jersey of the UK, riots are already commencing as a result of a sexual assault incident in a hostel for asylum seekers. Many people in the UK feel that there is a disproportionate amount of abuse, violence and rape being generated by migrants. Indeed, Tommy Robinson's resurgence is somewhat based upon people's acceptance that there is a statistical anomaly when it comes to Pakistani rape gangs and some confusion about why an inquiry was not undertaken earlier. So is this issue about to come to a head? And whether you're on the left or the right. Surely we're all agreed that rape is a bad, bad thing. And whatever we have to do to annihilate this scourge from our culture, we will do together. Let's get into this story. I'm from Essex, and I know what the people of Essex are about because, well, I am them. And I will tell you now that if things are kicking off in Essex, things is going to get Larry fast. Let's have a look at this story in detail. Yep, that's where I grew up.
It keeps kicking off. And the anger is all too familiar. It started in Epping after a 38-year-old Ethiopian man was charged with sexual assault. The alleged victim was a local teenage girl. In court, it was confirmed that he had recently arrived on a small boat. Since then, violence has continued around the Bell Hotel, which has been home to asylum seekers for several years.
Asylum seeker is an interesting piece of language. There's no question that there are many people from around the world seeking asylum. There's no question that the UK has a history that means that there's some responsibility for the disruption caused by colonialism, imperialism, corporatism, the exploitation of various nations. Who's paying that price, though? When they put asylum seekers in hotels, are they in Kensington? Are they in Oxfordshire? Are they in the quaint towns and cities where most members of parliament dwell? No, they put the asylum seekers near working class people, almost as if they benefit from ongoing social unrest. When I have my conversation with Tommy Robinson next week, the one thing that I might focus on is the possibility working people of all races and nationalities find ways to live together harmoniously. And if there is an electoral mandate to control, limit, or even end asylum as a result of the will of the British people, then that should be observed. But until then, and with people that live here already, there has to be some harmony and peace. But asylum seekers also is perhaps not the appropriate term for someone that's committing sexual offences, raping or assaulting young girls. There's another term for that, one with which I'm all too familiar as a result of allegations levelled against me. Thank the Lord I have the opportunity to attend trial so those things can be addressed. You can see why the British people are so infuriated and angered that these disgusting crimes are taking place in their land, in their country, that their ancestors built, that their taxes pay for, while their opinions and their voices are shut down and not heard.
I knew about it, and I can agree with what they're doing, totally can agree with it, and I would have come along, but what stopped me coming along was I was frightened in case it turned nasty,
And it did.
And it did.
The police are demanding it stops.
But how on earth would you allow it to happen?
Feelings are running high. The violence left 8 police officers injured.
We will always facilitate peaceful protest.
You'll notice that the accents of the police officers and the accents of the protesters are the same. They're the same people from the same community being turned against one another by a manipulative authoritarian government that claims that mass migration is a result of compassion, care and duty rather than exploitation, disruption and part of a global agenda to cause despair across indigenous native populations. Compassion and harmony, care, duty, love, service, these are the most significant and important Christian principles, a willingness to sacrifice yourself up until the point of death. Do you imagine, let me know in the comments and chat, that your government in the UK are running in accordance with those principles? Or do you feel that what they're trying to create is despondency, disruption and despair?
We'll also always make sure that the voice of our community is heard. What we will not tolerate is those random acts of violence that we saw last night.
There's no question that in hostile, hot climates, random acts of violence do occur. And there's no question that once a kind of mob mentality descends or ascends, whatever you want to call it, that there is an increase in irrational and ridiculous violence. At the moment, the UK feels like a leaderless land, lost and directionless, without a nucleus, without clear direction, without love or compassion or guidance, falling apart in a conflagration. How heartbreaking it is to know that this beautiful country, these beautiful people right where I am from are in this discomfort and this despair because of bad government, because of bad policies, bad ideas that seem to reach beyond ineptitude and right into cruelty.
Arrests have already been made. The warning is clear. If you do this, you can expect the police at your door.
You expect the police at your door anyway. They're coming to your door for what you're posting on the internet. They'll find a reason to arrest you. If you're outspoken, if you're confident, if you're strong, if you've got beliefs in God, if you've got belief in anything other than total submission and compliance to the state rather than submission to a higher power, a higher authority, something that might light you up and liven you right up. If you've got anything other than that, they'll find a way of shutting you down. Believe.
This flashpoint has some of the hallmarks of the rioting that spread through towns and cities last summer. Years of anger over immigration whipped up online. Hundreds of people were jailed for their part in those riots. But this deep-seated frustration didn't disappear. Despite repeated government promises to address the small boats in the channel, they continue to cross. 398 people arrived yesterday. On the French side, near Calais, migrants have clashed with police. Managing this movement of people is an ongoing battle. And the way it's filtered into communities across the UK, like here in Epping, has consequences.
The tension has been growing over weeks, maybe months.
We can't make this content without the support of our partners. Here's a message from one now. Free speech is under attack, Jack, but Rumble refuses to take it lying down. Rumble is farting out the fierce cock of authoritarianism and clamping shut the butt cheeks of free speech, baby. We've always believed in empowering voices, no matter how unpopular, and now we're taking that fight to the next level. When major advertisers conspired to pull their dollary dues, even brands like Dunkin' Donuts turned their back, claiming Rumble had a right-wing culture. But we're not here to fit a mold. We're here to defend free expression. How dare you? How dare you? Just look at some of these comments. Keep it going, Russell. Great stuff. That is from Benito Mussolini. Well done, Russell. Magnificent. I loved your take on Israel. And that's from Mr. Goebbels. You know, there is no right-wing culture here on Rumble. To strengthen this mission, we're excited to offer Rumble Premium, a completely ad-free experience, except ironically, sometimes I do record the ads on Rumble Premium, but you get a behind-the-scenes glimpse. Give us a glimpse, 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 give us a glimpse. Ooh-wee! A completely ad-free experience with exclusive benefits. We're friends, but with benefits. Not benefits like that, Greta Thunberg, if that's your real name.
Greta Thunberg.
Which I doubt. Content from creators like Russell Brand. Yo, I'm that dude. Dr. Disrespect. Are you even a real doctor? Tim Cast. And the Mug Club with Crowder. It's more than a subscription. It's a stand for free speech. Your voice matters. For a limited time, you can get $10 off an annual plan using the Rumble code BRAND. Now, I do want you to do that because my contract is up for renewal and it would really help me. So go get it right now. Visit rumble.com/premium/brand and claim your discount today. Together we can turn the tide, whether you join Rumble Premium or simply keep watching. Your support helps keep free speech alive. And with free speech, we can be free together. Subscribe to Rumble now.
You've only got to be a person who speaks with a slightly different accent or slightly different colour and just sitting on a bench in the middle of town on one of the greens, and you're immediately branded as being an asylum seeker from the Bell.
The government wants to close asylum seeker hotels, but that will take years. They describe the asylum system they inherited as broken.
Remember that trope? You blame the previous administration or the previous government. How quickly were they able to herd us into our homes? How quickly were they able to distribute a vaccine with potentially negative side effects, maybe even mortality? How slow they are to conduct a thorough inquiry? How quickly they can vote themselves into pay rises? How quickly they can find the money for war? Oh, when it comes to reflecting and respecting the will of the people, it takes years. It always takes years to do what we want. It always takes seconds to do what they want. Like time herself moves more elegantly and gracefully when bent to their perpetual and centralized will. Well, how else are we to oppose this level of corruption except en masse together and on the streets? Let me know what you think in the comments in the chat. Oh my God! That ain't good, man. That's police vans blowing down protesters. Now, whether they are pro-Palestine or anti-migration, you should have a consistent perspective on the police. If we believe in free speech, then whether people are pro-Israel or pro-Palestine, they should have the right to protest. Whether they're pro-migration or anti-migration, they should have the right to protest. But what's becoming clear is that people are being brought out of their homes and onto the street because democracy has failed. Politics has failed. The media has failed. I have enough personal experience, both as a person that's from Essex, as a person that's been a drug addict, as a person that's been arrested many times, who knows now from inside and out how the establishment operates, whether that's the BBC that I have worked for, the Channel 4 that I have worked for, all of these various newspapers that have turned against me. I know the corruption of these systems. I know their intention. I know who they serve and what they consider worthwhile, who they consider be disposable, killable, expendable. It's you. They hate ordinary English people. They hate the working class people of Essex. Whether you're white or brown or Christian or atheist, they want you divided. They want you at each other's throats. What they don't want necessarily is mass civil disobedience that's targeted specifically towards the government and the media. Never trust the media. Don't spend your money on their crap. Oppose them. Of course, we know that many of these media organisations have offices throughout London. The Guardian newspaper, Times newspaper, News International. Whether they're lying to you about migration, whether they're lying to you about rape gangs, whether they're lying to you about Millie Dowler, these liars maintain their power because of our acquiescence, because of our lack of organisation, because of our unwillingness to sacrifice. But one thing the BBC and I agree on right now is that this will be a summer of riots. And the BBC, they've done such a wonderful job of masking the malfeasance of many, many sex offenders and paedophiles. Note the people they like to target and spuriously accuse of sex crimes versus the people whose peculiar crimes they seem to have participated in and masked. What an extraordinary collision. What an extraordinary contradiction. What a peculiar paradox. Seems to be the time where institutions have failed. And when institutions fail, the people have a duty to respond.
Fixing it is one way of calming fractured communities.
This is a British media outlet. Keir Starmer fears repeat of summer riots after violent clashes outside Epping Asylum Hotel. And here are the BBC reporting on the potential for a summer of rioting.
But interestingly, I was talking to one parliamentary veteran. They are really, really worried. They said to me, we are going to have a summer of riots. You can just feel it, they said. It is a tinderbox. That was the word used by Neil Hudson, the Conservative MP for Epping Forest, on this programme.
She loves the idea of a summer of riots. Oh, a summer of riots, eh? I don't know. She might be a nice person. But in some of my recent interactions with the police, these subjects came up as well. The UK is divided. It's in despair. It's in serious trouble. A summer of riots is highly likely. Of course, no one welcomes a situation in which the police could be hurt or wounded, or members of the public could be hurt or wounded. But everyone's being hurt and wounded in the UK right now because of increased surveillance, draconian measures everywhere, controls, the end of free speech, a level of exploitation and advocacy for war, even civil war being talked about that is unacceptable in the United Kingdom. Britain needs massive revision. Maybe it needs a lot more than reform.
On Friday, and what this person said to me is that there's no doubt that bad elements are driving the violence and the disturbance.
We're going to take a pause now. If you're watching this on YouTube and you want to see the rest of that, the rest of this piece, click the link in the description and join us over on Rumble. And if you ain't got Rumble Premium yet, get Rumble Premium now.
But they are feeding off concerns in the community. And listen to what this veteran MP said to me. They're talking about how they're seeing a change in their constituency. Good, ordinary people feeling their town is changing around them.
Oh yeah, they must all have entered into a total delusion collectively together rather than there being a coordinated effort by government and media.